Nike has 12 national teams showing up to the World Cup this year in defective jerseys, and the mistake was sitting in their own design renders from 2023. Nobody caught it. We're talking about the biggest sporting event on the planet, 5 billion viewers, a home soil World Cup, and the biggest sportswear brand in the world showing up with a kit people are comparing to 1980s shoulder pads. Okay, maybe that's a little bit dramatic, but 3 years of designers, workshops, prototype stages, and federation approvals, and at no point did somebody look at the shoulders and say, stop. The kits are made, they're sold, they're sitting in people's closets right now. The question is no longer, how did this happen? The question is, what does Nike do next? Nike built these kits on a new template called AeroFit, engineered to channel more than double the airflow of their previous kits for the summer heat across the US, Mexico, and Canada. Impressive work on paper. The problem is they built a shoulder seam that sits too high on the collarbone with a construction so stiff it will not lie flat. What you get is a shoulder that protrudes outward like peak, sleeves that run short, making it look even wider, and a neckline that gaps open. 3 problems from structural decisions. Both the match jersey at $175 and the stadium replica at $100 have the exact same defect, meaning every person who bought one already owns a defective product. Uruguay got the worst of it with players compared to Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Mbappe on France was described as borderline comical, and the defect is there across all 12 teams without exception. Of course, this was not a rushed job, and that is what makes this so hard to believe. Nike runs a 3-year development cycle, player workshops, designer travel, federation sign-offs, sampling rounds, then mass production starts around October 2025 for a March 2026 launch. Every step had people whose job it was to make sure the product was just right, and the money behind the pipeline is staggering. Nike spends hundreds of millions every year on football sponsorships alone. Brazil is $100 million per year through 2038. France reportedly exceeds Germany's deal at 100 million euros per year. England is 400 million pounds over 12 years. All of that committed before a single jersey is designed, made, or sold. So when people say it's a $100 million mistake, you have to understand that is just the cost of one sponsorship deal for 1 year. The real exposure across production, refunds, lost sales, and brand damage is realistically far higher, and it traces back to that one seam decision that nobody caught. Here is where it gets really stunning. Brazilian designer Felipe Silva found leaked internal Nike mood boards from 2023, and the shoulder defect was sitting right there in Nike's own 3D renders from the very beginning. The same peak you see on Mbappe and Valverde on the pitch was already visible 3 years before these kits went on sale. Footy Headlines independently verified this. It was right there from day one, and nobody caught it. The reason likely comes down to how these kits were built. AeroFit was designed using computational processes and AI-assisted tools that hit every engineering target, but computational design does not look at how something sits on a human body. That requires real human judgment, and somewhere across 3 years, that call never got made. And this is not the first time. When you're operating at a scale like Nike is, any overlooked error can easily balloon into something far greater. We've seen it before, and the pattern is always similar. 2019, Zion Williamson, 33 seconds into Duke versus North Carolina, his Nike shoe rips apart. Obama was courtside. Stock dropped 1.7% overnight, erasing over $1 billion in market value from one shoe tear. 2024, Nike rolls out new Vapor Premier uniforms for MLB. See-through pants, mismatched colors, poor fit. The Players Association issues a formal memo saying Nike was innovating something that did not need to be innovated. That fix took 6 to 18 months. The World Cup starts in 8 weeks. Every single time, new tech that passed every test failed in the real world. And now it has happened again, this time in a World Cup on home soil. When this went public, Nike called it a minor issue, suggesting steam ironing a $175 jersey and announcing no recall, no compensation, and no specific plan. Fans were furious. To be honest, it really is too late to fix. There are simply too many produced at this point, and the biggest winners here are probably the knockoff sellers because almost nobody is buying the authentic versions anymore. Realistically, the most likely outcome is for for corrected kits for the players before June 11th, keeping the defect off television for the 5 billion people watching. But for the millions of retail buyers around the world, a full global recall in 8 weeks is simply logistically impossible. And what makes all of this worse is the timing. Revenue is down 10%, net income is down 44%, stock is sliding, and the CEO is working hard to maintain a comeback narrative. A defective kit issue 2 months before a home soil World Cup was not part of that agenda. My take on all of this is pretty simple. First, as I mentioned earlier, Nike is operating at a scale that JerseyBird can't even comprehend. It would be completely out of touch for me to throw stones at Nike when we don't even have a single team in the tournament. But I am surprised that something of this magnitude slipped through so many areas of review and revision. Regardless, the one thing I will seriously take away from this is never stray too far from the basics. In a world of AI renders, AI designers, and everything else that has been automated, the best way to test a kit simply starts by standing in front of the mirror. I still love Nike. I do have some sympathy for them in this situation. I might be alone in that, but in my opinion, they're still the best footwear company in the world. I'd still rank them number 2 in football shirts behind only Adidas, so they are still an elite company. And despite everything, Brazil's defective kit still broke all-time sales records with items selling out within hours of launch. So the commercial damage may end up being a lot smaller than the headlines suggest. The brand damage, on the other hand, is a very different conversation, and that is a lot harder to iron out.